Welcome to InfoStream, your daily current. Unsure what to listen to? Turn to us for today's headlines. Stay informed. UN reinstates sanctions on Iran. Increased concerns about Iran's nuclear program remain. Netanyahu's fiery UN speech sparks walkouts. The UN General Assembly reacted strongly to Netanyahu's address. UK's colonial legacy and Palestinian claims. The historical context of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is debated. Obama criticizes Israel's Gaza offensive, calls for Palestinian statehood. Obama advocates for a Palestinian state as part of the conflict resolution. Uefa faces mounting pressure to ban Israel from sporting competitions. Sporting organizations are considering sanctions against Israel. Moldova holds key election as Russia's shadow looms. Large elections in Moldova are influenced by Russian geopolitical interests. Kenyan trafficking ring linked to Ukraine conflict. Busted connections between the conflict in Ukraine and trafficking networks are exposed. U.S. revokes Colombian President Petro's visa following Incendiary. Remarks visa restrictions were imposed due to controversial statements. Danish military bases targeted by drone disruptions. Security concerns regarding drone activity affect Danish military operations. South Korea government services paralyzed by data center fire. A significant fire caused widespread disruption in South Korea. Reform UK ex-leader admits bribery related to Russia. Allegations of corruption involving Russia are being investigated. Thailand and China strengthen ties, with expanded collaboration. Increased cooperation is developing between Thailand and China. Comey indicted on false statement charge. Centered on Clinton investigation, James Comey faces legal charges related to the Clinton investigation. Trump orders troops to Portland and expands IC protection efforts. Trump's administration continues policies regarding Portland and immigration enforcement. FBI purges agents linked to George Floyd protests. The FBI is taking action regarding agents involved in the George Floyd protests. UN reinstates sanctions on Iran over nuclear concerns. The United Nations is set to reimpose sweeping economic and military sanctions on Iran, a decade after their initial lifting following the country's nuclear program. This action follows a letter from the UK, France, and Germany to the UN Security Council, citing Iran's failure to meet its commitments regarding its nuclear activities, triggering a 30-day period for a diplomatic resolution. Iran has subsequently recalled its ambassadors from the UK, France, and Germany. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian vehemently condemned the sanctions, describing them as unfair, unjust, and illegal. Iran's response includes a rejection of a U.S. demand for the complete handover of its enriched uranium stockpile in exchange for a 3-month sanctions exemption. Pezeshkian argued that such a concession would create a noose around our neck. The move comes after Iran intensified its banned nuclear activity following the U.S. withdrawal from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, under Donald Trump's administration. Trump criticized the Obama-era deal as flawed, leading to the initial sanctions. A last-minute resolution, spearheaded by China and Russia, seeking a 6-month delay, garnered only 4 votes within the 15-member Security Council. The sanctions encompass an arms embargo, uranium enrichment restrictions, bans on ballistic missile activities, asset freezes, and authorization for inspections of Iranian cargo. Iran's actions are fueled by the bombing of several nuclear sites and military bases by Israel in the U.S. in June, following stalled negotiations between the U.S. and Iran. Pezeshkian insists Iran will not develop nuclear weapons, accusing foreign powers of seeking to destabilize the region. He emphasized Iran's commitment to the Non-Proliferation Treaty, but demanded assurances against future attacks on its nuclear facilities. The situation remains highly fraught, with the sanctions adding further strain to Iran's already struggling economy. Netanyahu's fiery UN speech sparks walkouts, proposes new Gaza ceasefire plan. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu delivered a highly contentious speech at the United Nations General Assembly, characterized by strong condemnation of Iran, Western recognition of a Palestinian state, and a resolute commitment to continuing the war in Gaza until Hamas is eradicated. The speech prompted immediate walkouts from numerous delegations and included the broadcast of his remarks directly into Gaza, aiming to address the remaining hostages. Netanyahu utilized visual aids, specifically a map of Iran and its proxies, to underscore his arguments. Amidst the speech, Netanyahu vehemently rejected the possibility of a two-state solution and accused Western countries of buckling under pressure. He expressed deep frustration over the recent recognition of a Palestinian state by nations like France, Britain, Canada, and Australia, labeling it as shameful and disgraceful. Netanyahu also highlighted the plight of the 48 remaining hostages, reading out the names of those believed to be alive, while simultaneously criticizing families for questioning his handling of the situation. Following the speech, the Trump administration presented a 21-point Gaza peace plan, aiming to achieve a ceasefire. The plan proposes the immediate release of all hostages in exchange for a phased withdrawal of Israeli forces, coupled with a commitment from Israel not to attack Qatar. The proposal outlines an interim governance structure, including an international body and a Palestinian committee, without a timeline for Palestinian Authority leadership. Despite international pressure and the proposed ceasefire plan, Netanyahu remained unwavering in his determination to continue the war in Gaza, asserting that Hamas poses a continuous threat. The Trump administration's plan specifically excludes a future role for Hamas in governance and prohibits forced displacement from Gaza. While Arab leaders expressed broad support for the plan, they emphasized the urgency of ending the conflict. Trump indicated that negotiators were very close to a deal and is expected to meet with Netanyahu on Monday. The situation remains highly volatile, with no immediate resolution in sight. UK's colonial legacy in Palestinian claims, and Palestinians are intensifying their demand for a formal apology and reparations from the UK government, citing alleged war crimes committed during the British Mandate in Palestine, a 1917-1948. A 400-page legal petition has been submitted to the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, representing 13 families who claim they suffered violence, exile, or repression. Key figures, including Victor Catton, argue that the government's recent recognition of a Palestinian state does not adequately address the UK's historical conduct and legacy. Catton emphasizes that the British denied self-government, empowering a high commissioner to act as a dictator, placing the Palestinian population under immense strain. He asserts that recognition alone is insufficient, as these historical issues remain a living reality for Palestinians today. The petition details 3 decades of alleged abuses by British forces, including murder, torture, expulsion, and collective punishment, tactics that suppress the Arab Palestinian population. Recent evidence, including audio recordings from decades later, reveals details of arbitrary killings, arson of villages, the caging of civilians, the use of human shields, and home demolitions, actions potentially conducted within formal policy guidelines or with senior officer consent. The UK Ministry of Defence acknowledges historical allegations and states that any evidence provided will be thoroughly reviewed. The petition builds upon previous UK concessions regarding colonial-era war crimes, such as the 2022 apology for the 1948 Patang massacre in Malaya and the settlement over abuses during the Mau Mau uprising in Kenya. The UK's recognition of a Palestinian state, alongside France and other nations, has been met with mixed reactions. While welcomed by Palestinians, it has been rejected by Israel and the United States, who contend it hinders mediation efforts in the Gaza Strip conflict. The historical context involves Britain's invasion of Palestine during World War I, its facilitation of the 1917 Balfour Declaration, and the subsequent Arab Revolt 1936–1939, which resulted in significant casualties and displacement. The petitioners seek to establish accountability for these actions, demanding a formal acknowledgement of the UK's role in the historical injustices faced by the Palestinian people. Obama criticizes Israel's Gaza offensive, calls for Palestinian statehood. Former President Barack Obama delivered a sharp critique of Israel's ongoing military operations in Gaza, asserting there's no military rationale for continued bombardment of the devastated territory. Speaking in Dublin, Ireland, Obama emphasized the urgent humanitarian crisis, stating that children are suffering from starvation and that the situation demands immediate action. He advocated for a solution involving a Palestinian state alongside a secure Israel, highlighting the necessity of resolving the conflict through a path of coexistence. The comments, released by Obama's office, came during a period of heightened international attention surrounding the conflict, particularly as world leaders convened at the United Nations General Assembly. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu responded forcefully, accusing Western nations of succumbing to biased media narratives and extremist pressures. He acknowledged a strained relationship with Obama, stating that the two leaders were not the best of friends. Obama criticized political leaders for perpetuating a divisive us versus them mentality, arguing that it serves only to maintain power. He rejected what he termed a cynical game and expressed his disapproval of Hamas's approach, which he described as putting its own people at risk. Amidst the escalating tensions, the United Nations voiced concerns about Israel's planned invasion of Gaza City, anticipating the potential displacement of approximately 1 million Palestinians. Despite these warnings, Israel reported that 640,000 people had evacuated the city. The Trump administration is also actively pursuing a resolution, proposing a 21-point peace plan to Arab leaders. President Trump has issued a firm red line, explicitly forbidding Israel from annexing the West Bank, a stance he reiterated to Netanyahu. These diplomatic efforts reflect a growing international pressure for a ceasefire and a long-term solution to the conflict. Uefa faces mounting pressure to ban Israel from sporting competitions. Uefa is facing significant pressure to suspend Israel's participation in its competitions, following a growing chorus of demands, primarily driven by the ongoing conflict in Gaza. Previously resistant to such measures, Uefa, led by President Alexander Su-Efron, had generally opposed blanket bans, prioritizing athlete competition and alternative resolutions. However, intense criticism, including from Liverpool's Mohamed Salah, regarding Uefa's handling of the death of Palestinian footballer Suleiman Al-Obeid, triggered a shift in the organization's stance. The Palestinian Football Association, PFA, reported Al-Obeid's death as a result of an Israeli attack while awaiting humanitarian aid in Gaza, alongside a documented total of 421 footballers killed or dying from starvation, including 103 children. This situation prompted Uefa to display banners during the Super Cup, reading "Stop killing children" and "Stop killing civilians." The Turkish Football Association, TFA, became the first Uefa member to publicly demand Israel's suspension, citing the organization's inaction regarding the conflict. TFA President Ibrahim Hasiosmanoglu argued that Uefa and FIFA must take immediate action. The conflict itself stems from Israel's military campaign in Gaza following the Hamas attack on the 7th of October 2023, resulting in over 502 deaths, according to Gaza's Hamas-run health ministry. Concerns regarding unequal application of rules are also prominent, highlighted by Hector Bellerin, who questioned the differing responses compared to the Russia-Ukraine war. Conversely, some maintain that Israel's continued participation is crucial, arguing that removing Israel would be a betrayal of Jewish communities and would not resolve the conflict. This debate highlights the complex geopolitical ramifications extending beyond the sporting world. The situation continues to evolve, with considerable pressure building toward a formal decision, potentially creating far-reaching consequences. Moldova holds key election as Russia's shadow looms large. Moldova is preparing for a pivotal election heavily influenced by Russia's attempts to destabilize the country and install a pro-Kremlin government. Evidence of widespread election interference, including vote buying, disinformation campaigns, and a plot to incite violence, has emerged, linked to Russian investment exceeding $100 million. The interference, described as one of the most advanced campaigns seen, utilizes cryptocurrency and aims to undermine Moldova's path toward EU membership. The election pits the governing party of Salvation PS, led by Doran Rishin, against the Patriotic Bloc, primarily composed of the Socialist and Communist parties, and Alternativa. Key opposition candidate Igor Dodon, a former president, actively seeks to restore relations with Russia, dismissing interference allegations and advocating for reverting to Russian gas purchases. Dodon's strategy includes promising street protests if PAS secures a majority through falsification. The situation is complicated by Russia's ongoing war in Ukraine and its influence in the breakaway Transnistria region, which houses a Soviet-era ammunition store and Russian troops. A Russia-leaning government could complicate Ukraine's efforts and potentially offer a foothold for further hybrid activity. Police Chief Viral Cernalday Inu characterizes the interference as unprecedented, highlighting the scale of Russian investment and the sophisticated methods employed. The opposition parties, particularly Dodon, accuse the government of suppressing opposition candidates and hindering the electoral process. The election is framed as a battle for Moldova's future, with PS emphasizing EU membership and investment, while the opposition focuses on traditional ties with Russia and criticizes the government's tactics. The potential impact extends beyond Moldova, posing a challenge to European security and stability. The election's outcome will significantly shape Moldova's geopolitical alignment and its relationship with both the EU and Russia. The use of tactics like disseminating fear through flyers depicting destroyed Ukrainian homes is a deliberate strategy to sway voters. The overall atmosphere is characterized by distrust and heightened tensions, reflecting the complex and precarious situation facing the country. Kenyan trafficking ring linked to Ukraine conflict busted. Recent police operations in Kenya have resulted in the dismantling of a sophisticated human trafficking ring that was exploiting vulnerable individuals, primarily Kenyans, to be transported to Russia to fight in the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. 22 Kenyans were discovered in an apartment near Nairobi, awaiting processing for travel to Russia. A key suspect, responsible for coordinating the victims' movement, has been arrested, initiating a multi-agency security operation targeting the criminal network. The operation uncovered substantial evidence of the scheme, including recruitment materials, travel documents, and job offer letters, revealing the deceptive tactic of promising lucrative employment in Moscow, while ultimately intending to deploy recruits to fight for the Russian military in Ukraine. Victims revealed they had signed contracts committing to pay up to 18,000 for visas, travel, and logistical support, with many having already paid deposits of 500. The operation highlighted a growing concern regarding the increasing number of Africans being trafficked abroad under false job promises. A young Kenyan athlete was previously captured in Ukraine, admitting he was tricked into joining the Russian army. Following the arrest, 2 Kenyans have returned home, one currently hospitalized. Investigations revealed the trafficking network was extorting significant sums from desperate job seekers. The operation underscores the vulnerability of individuals seeking employment opportunities. Furthermore, the situation has prompted a broader discussion regarding the lack of interest from some African nations in repatriating their citizens held as prisoners of war in Ukraine. Ukraine spokesperson on prisoner of war treatment, Petro indicated that citizens from several African countries, including Somalia, Sierra Leone, Togo, Cuba, and Sri Lanka, are currently held in Ukrainian prisoner of war camps, with limited engagement from their respective governments regarding their return. The case represents a serious breach of international law and highlights the urgent need for enhanced global cooperation to combat human trafficking and protect vulnerable individuals from exploitation. U.S. revokes Colombian President Petro's visa following incendiary remarks. The United States has revoked the visa of Colombian President Gustavo Petro following his public call to U.S. soldiers to disobey President Donald Trump's orders, escalating tensions between the two nations. This action was announced by the U.S. State Department, citing Petro's reckless and incendiary actions. Petro was in New York for the United Nations General Assembly when the revocation was announced. During a speech outside the UN headquarters, Petro directly addressed U.S. soldiers, urging them not to point their guns at people and demanding they disobey the orders of Trump. Obey the orders of humanity. He also criticized Trump's alleged complicity in genocide in Gaza and advocated for criminal proceedings regarding U.S. airstrikes on suspected drug trafficking vessels in international waters. The State Department statement emphasized that Petro's actions constituted a violation of norms surrounding diplomatic immunity and the functioning of the UN General Assembly. Petro responded by asserting that the U.S. decision was a breach of international law, particularly concerning the denial of entry to the Palestinian Authority and his own visa revocation due to his criticism of the Israel-Gaza conflict. Petro's visit to New York coincided with his condemnation of U.S. military actions, specifically the airstrikes, and his broader stance against Israel's operations in Gaza. Colombia's foreign ministry and Petro's office have not yet released official statements regarding the visa revocation. Adding to the situation, Colombia had previously blocked the landing of 2 U.S. military flights carrying deported migrants, a move that led to a subsequent agreement to accept the deportees. Colombia's relationship with the United States has been strained in recent months due to Petro's outspoken criticism of U.S. foreign policy. Furthermore, Petro has suspended coal exports to Israel. The U.S. action underscores the increasingly complex and adversarial relationship between the two countries, particularly concerning the ongoing conflict in Gaza and broader geopolitical issues. Danish military bases targeted by drone disruptions. A series of drone incursions have disrupted air operations and raised significant security concerns across Denmark, Germany, Norway, and Lithuania. Primarily, drones were observed over Denmark's largest military base, Karup Air Base, following a pattern of incidents that began earlier this week. These events, described as a hybrid attack by Danish authorities, involved multiple sightings of drones near various military installations, including Aalborg and Billund airports, and Orland Air Base in Norway. The incidents prompted temporary airspace closures above Karup Air Base and other affected locations, though no commercial flights were impacted due to the lack of scheduled traffic. Police investigations are underway, collaborating with the Danish military to determine the origin of the drones and the nature of the operation. While authorities haven't definitively attributed the activity to a specific actor, they acknowledge the heightened threat posed by drones. Germany's Interior Ministry is also investigating drone sightings in Schleswig-Holstein, bordering Jutland, where Karup Air Base is located. German Interior Minister Alexander De Brint emphasized the seriousness of the threat and plans to discuss the issue with European partners next month. The drone activity has created considerable disruption, leading to temporary airport closures and flight delays. Notably, Oslo Airport in Norway experienced a temporary shutdown due to possible drone sightings. Furthermore, Vilnius Airport in Lithuania, sharing a border with Russia, also reported drone activity impacting flights. The Danish military's Karup Air Base, employing approximately 3,500 personnel and housing all Danish Armed Forces helicopters and airspace surveillance, has been a primary target. The ongoing investigations highlight a growing concern about aerial threats and potential vulnerabilities, prompting a coordinated response across multiple European nations. The situation is under constant monitoring, with authorities working to assess the scope of the threat and implement appropriate countermeasures. South Korea government services paralyzed by data center fire. A significant fire at South Korea's National Information Resources Service data center in Daejeon caused widespread disruption to the nation's online government services. The blaze, initiated by an explosion involving lithium-ion batteries at approximately 8:20 p.m. local time on Friday, triggered a thermal runaway, resulting in extreme heat within the server room, severely hindering firefighting efforts. Prime Minister Kim Min-seok described the situation as paralyzing the government's internal digital platform, specifically impacting its official email system and numerous websites. As of Saturday morning, over 600 online government services were offline, encompassing critical systems like a mobile ID system and online postal services. The disruption extended to airport travelers reliant on mobile IDs for identification purposes, potentially causing travel complications. Approximately 170 firefighters and 63 fire trucks responded to the emergency, successfully bringing the main fire under control by 6:30 a.m. the following day. One worker sustained first-degree burns to their face and arm while handling the batteries, and nearly 200 lithium-ion battery packs were destroyed. The data center serves as a crucial cloud server for numerous government services and databases, not just within South Korea but also internationally. The head of the data center, Lee Jae-yong, indicated that there was no immediate estimate for when services would be restored. Furthermore, the government's online platform for handling complaints and petitions was also suspended due to the incident. Prime Minister Kim Min-seok offered an apology to the public for the inconvenience and affirmed the government's commitment to a swift restoration of services. A key factor contributing to the difficulty in containing the fire was the concentration of vital government systems within a single location, highlighting a vulnerability within the nation's digital infrastructure. The incident underscored the potential risks associated with storing large quantities of lithium-ion batteries within sensitive government facilities. Reform UK ex-leader admits bribery related to Russia. Nathan Gill, the former leader of Reform UK in Wales, has pleaded guilty to 8 counts of bribery, stemming from his acceptance of financial advantage linked to pro-Russia statements made while serving as an elected member of the European Parliament. The charges, brought between December 2018 and July 2019, relate to making statements supportive of a particular narrative that would benefit Russia concerning events in Ukraine. Gill was tasked by Ukrainian figure Oleg Voloshin, a former member of the pro-Russian opposition platform for Life Party, on at least 8 occasions to produce these statements in return for money. Evidence, including WhatsApp messages, demonstrated this arrangement. The prosecution, led by Mark Haywood KC, accepted the guilty pleas, stating they accurately reflected the criminal activities. Gill also denied one charge of conspiracy to commit bribery, but the prosecution agreed to drop this charge. The investigation, spearheaded by the Met's Counter-Terrorism Command under Commander Dominic Murphy, began following Gill's stop at Manchester Airport in September 2021. Gill admitted to asking questions, making statements, and carrying out other activities within the European Parliament in support of pro-Russian parties during the Ukraine conflict. Judge Chima Grubb emphasized the seriousness of the offense, noting Gill's full disclosure of the facts. The investigation revealed Gill was receiving payments to peddle narratives that would benefit Russian interests. The case highlights concerns about interference in democratic processes and the protection of national security. The investigation's success in securing a guilty plea reflects the thoroughness of the Met's Counter-Terrorism Command's work. Peter Wright KC, Gill's defense barrister, anticipated an immediate custodial sentence. The outcome underscores the importance of upholding democratic values and safeguarding against threats to national security. The investigation's conclusion marks a significant step in addressing potential vulnerabilities within the European Parliament. Thailand and China strengthened ties with expanded collaboration. Thailand and China solidified their strategic partnership at the Thailand-China Cooperation Expo 2025, marking 50 years of diplomatic relations and outlining a roadmap for enhanced collaboration across multiple sectors. Prime Minister Anutin Charnvirakul emphasized the critical importance of bolstering economic ties, particularly focusing on China's role as a leading manufacturing base for electric vehicles, semiconductors, and as a vital logistics hub connecting China to the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN. The event, attended by key figures including Chinese Ambassador Zhang Jiangwei, Commerce Minister Sufuji Sathumpan, and Chamber of Commerce Chairman Po Jaramwatananat, centered on 5 key areas for cooperation. These included upgrading logistics and infrastructure, specifically the Thai-China high-speed rail project, and investment within the Eastern Economic Corridors (EEC). Thailand's burgeoning capabilities in electric vehicle, semiconductor, and green battery production were highlighted, with China positioned as a crucial partner under a 5-year economic joint cooperation plan, 2025-2029. Beyond trade and manufacturing, Newton advocated for collaborative efforts in digital technology and innovation, encompassing the creation of cross-border digital platforms, artificial intelligence research, and support for small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs and startups, alongside advancements in agriculture and security. People-to-people exchanges, encompassing education, culture, language, and tourism, were also prioritized, leveraging the shared cultural heritage of the two nations. Jensereyu Chilanat, president of the Privy Council, underscored the long-standing friendship built on mutual trust and non-interference. He referenced historical royal bonds and leadership relations that have consistently strengthened bilateral ties. The sentiment China and Thailand are not far apart, but brothers encapsulates the depth of the relationship, highlighting the shared commitment to continued cooperation and prosperity. The event signified a renewed commitment to a strong, multifaceted partnership between the two nations, extending Thailand's role as a gateway for China's engagement with ASEAN. Comey indicted on false statement charge, centered on Clinton investigation. Former FBI Director James Comey has been indicted on charges of making false statements to Congress, primarily linked to the investigation surrounding Hillary Clinton's email server. The indictment centers on allegations that Comey authorized the leak of classified information related to the FBI's 2016 investigation into Clinton's use of a private email server. The specific accusations involve a purported leak to the media concerning classified information within the Arctic Haze investigation, a prior FBI inquiry into 4 news stories from 2017. The charges stem from Comey's 2020 testimony before Congress, where he denied authorizing the leak of classified information. The indictment alleges that he made false statements when he claimed he hadn't authorized anyone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports regarding the Clinton investigation. Key figures involved include Hillary Clinton, identified as Person 1 in the indictment, and Daniel Richman, a longtime friend and Columbia Law School professor who served as a special government employee at the FBI during Comey's tenure. Richman reportedly acted as a liaison between Comey and the media, attempting to correct stories critical of Comey. The investigation, dubbed Arctic Haze, focused on classified information disclosed in 4 news stories. FBI documents declassified and turned over to Congress last month revealed that Richman told investigators he was sure he didn't confirm the classified information. But he did state that Comey never asked him to talk to the media. Republican Senator Mike Rounds has characterized the indictment as an effort towards accountability. The current FBI director, Kash Patel, has criticized the investigation as a disgraceful chapter in history and stated that it continues to be investigated. The indictment represents a significant development in a long-standing political controversy surrounding Comey's handling of the 2016 investigations, which played a role in the 2016 presidential campaign. The charges suggest a renewed effort to hold Comey accountable for his actions during that period. Trump orders troops to Portland and expands ICE protection efforts. President Donald Trump has escalated his response to ongoing protests in Portland, Oregon, and significantly expanded federal support for immigration and customs enforcement. ICE facilities nationwide. Following a series of violent clashes and threats against ICE personnel and property, Trump authorized the deployment of troops to Portland to protect war-ravaged Portland and any of our ICE facilities under siege from attack by Antifa and other domestic terrorists. This action followed earlier statements characterizing Portland as like living in hell and hinting at a big number on those involved in protests. Trump also formally designated Antifa as a major terrorist organization, citing repeated violence and obstruction against federal agents. Concurrent with the Portland deployment, Attorney General Pam Bondi announced the deployment of Justice Department agents to ICE facilities to safeguard federal agents and property, and to arrest individuals engaged in federal crimes. This move followed a shooting at a Dallas ICE field office that resulted in 1 detainee death and 2 serious injuries, among at least 4 similar attacks on Texas ICE or Border Patrol locations. The escalating situation has involved numerous protests at ICE facilities, often resulting in the deployment of tear gas and confrontations between protesters and Department of Homeland Security officers. Notably, a Democratic mayor running for Congress in Illinois was recently tear gassed during a protest outside an ICE facility in the suburbs of Chicago. Furthermore, The administration has historically utilized National Guard troops to assist at ICE facilities. The administration's actions are largely driven by a perception of Portland as a hotspot for unrest and a target of paid agitators and terrorists. The Justice Department intends to investigate and prosecute individuals involved in acts of domestic terrorism and obstruction against federal agents. The administration's strategy involves a significant increase in federal intervention to address what it views as ongoing threats to ICE operations and national security. The actions reflect a heightened focus on combating perceived domestic extremism and protecting federal law enforcement assets. FBI Purges agents linked to George Floyd protests. Recent actions by the Federal Bureau of Investigation have resulted in the termination of as many as 20 agents, primarily those associated with a 2020 incident during protests following the death of George Floyd. This purge represents a broader effort by new FBI leadership to remove what they deem woke and politically influenced personnel from within the agency. The initial firings, confirmed by multiple sources, include approximately 15 agents directly involved in kneeling alongside demonstrators in Washington, D.C. during the height of the protests. The decision to terminate these agents follows a review conducted by the FBI's Inspection Division and evaluated by the Bureau's General Counsel's Office. The FBI Agents Association strongly criticized Director Kash Patel's leadership, asserting that the dismissals violate due process rights and damage trust within the agency, ultimately increasing national risk. The kneeling incident itself occurred in the summer of 2020, a period marked by widespread protests against racism and police brutality following Floyd's death. Faced with a confrontation, some agents, influenced by the tactics of National Guard soldiers, attempted to de-escalate tensions by kneeling. This action subsequently drew significant criticism, particularly from conservative media and some retired agents. Initially, FBI Director Christopher Wray determined that the kneeling did not constitute a policy violation. However, a subsequent reassessment earlier this year led to the agents being reassigned to less desirable roles, viewed internally as demotions. The FBI offered no explanation for these changes. This action aligns with a larger, ongoing review initiated by the Justice Department, examining the conduct of over 500 agents involved in various cases, including investigations related to the January 6th Capitol attack. 2 senior FBI officials, including one who initially resisted the Trump administration's efforts to identify agents involved in that investigation, were fired last month. The current leadership's focus on purging perceived woke elements reflects a shift in the FBI's priorities and operational approach. The Justice Department's broader review underscores a systematic effort to assess the conduct of FBI personnel across a range of cases.